The Magic Writing Feather. Chapter 1. The discovery. In the Addison, a cozy little house at the end of a winding lane, lived a young boy named Leo. Leo loved stories more than anything in the world. He loved reading them, hearing them, and most of all, he dreamed of writing his own. But every time he tried, the words seemed stuck, jumbled up in his head like a tangled ball of yarn. His sentences felt plain, and his ideas felt small. One rainy afternoon, while exploring his grandmother's dusty attic, Leo stumbled upon an old, wooden chest carved with strange swirling patterns. With a creak, he lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was the most beautiful object he had ever seen, a magnificent feather pen. It was long and sleek, with a plume of iridescent feathers that shimmered like a peacock's tail in the dim light. The shaft was made of dark, polished wood, warm to the touch. It seemed to hum with a silent, waiting energy. Curious, Leo picked it up. As his fingers closed around the shaft, a gentle warmth spread up his arm. A bottle of deep blue ink, which he hadn't noticed before, sat beside it. Without quite knowing why, Leo uncorked the ink, dipped the feather pen, and opened his empty notebook. His hand began to move almost by itself. He wasn't writing words. He was simply drawing a feeling, a looping, joyful squiggle. To his astonishment, the squiggle lifted off the page. It danced in the air before him like a tiny, happy comet, leaving a shimmering trail of light before fading away. Leo's heart hammered with excitement. He had just discovered something truly magical. Chapter 2. The first story. That night, under the glow of his bedside lamp, Leo decided to try again. He dipped the magic writing feather into the ink and concentrated. This time, he formed words. A tiny, cinnamon-colored mouse with bright, curious eyes is reading a book on my windowsill. The ink on the page glowed a soft gold. There was a soft pop, and suddenly, there it was. A tiny mouse, wearing miniature spectacles, was hunched over a book no bigger than a postage stamp. It looked up, nodded politely to a stunned Leo, and went back to its reading. Leo gasped. He had done it. He had written a story and made it real. Over the next few days, Leo's room became a portal to wonderful, small adventures. He wrote about a pillow that turned into a friendly cloud and floated around his room. He wrote about a teacup that never ran out of warm, sweet cocoa. He wrote about a castle made of gingerbread, and for a whole hour, his room smelled of baking spices and sugar. But Leo noticed something. Each time he made a story real, the shimmer in the feather's plume faded just a little bit. The bottle of ink, which never seemed to run out, grew slightly lighter. The magic, he realized, was not endless. Chapter 3. The Promise and the Probalmone Evening. Leo went to visit his next-door neighbor and best friend, Mrs. Albright. She was a kind, older woman who had always told Leo the most fantastic stories when he was younger. But lately, she had been sad. Her old dog, Barnaby, had passed away, and her house felt too big and too quiet. Seeing his friend so lonely gave Leo an idea, a wonderful, terrifying idea. He ran home, fetched the magic writing feather and his notebook, and sat at his desk with determined focus. He wanted to write the most important story of his life. He wanted to write a new friend for Mrs. Albright. He dipped the pen. The ink swirled in the bottle, looking shallower than ever. He began to write. There is a little dog with soft, floppy ears and a tail that wags like a happy metronome. His fur is the color of toasted marshmallows, and his name is... Suddenly, the doorbell rang downstairs. Leo jumped, his hand slipping. A large blot of ink splattered across the page, obscuring the dog's name. At that same moment, the shimmer in the feather vanished completely. The plume turned dull and gray. The magic was gone. Leo's heart sank. The story was unfinished. The magic was spent. He had failed. Chapter 4. The true magic dejected, Leo took the dull feather and the notebook downstairs. It was Mrs. Albright at the door, holding a plate of freshly baked cookies. "You left this in my garden yesterday, Leo," she said. Handing him his notebook, the page with the ink blot was visible. Leo's eyes welled up with tears. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Albright. I tried to write you a story, a happy one, but I ruined it." Double quotes. Mrs. Albright smiled gently and invited him in. She looked at the blot of ink. "A story doesn't have to be perfect to be good, Leo. Sometimes the best ones are the ones we finish together." She picked up a simple pencil from her side table. "What were you trying to write?" "A dog," Leo whispered. "For you. I wanted to write you a dog to keep you company." Mrs. Albright's eyes grew soft. "Oh, Leo, what a beautiful thought." She looked at the ink blot. "You know, this blot looks rather like a spot. Maybe he has a spot over his eye?" She handed the pencil to Leo. "You don't need a magic feather to tell a story, my dear. You just need a heart that wants to share one." Hesitantly, Leo took the pencil. He began to draw around the ink blot, giving it a shape. Mrs. Albright suggested floppy ears. Leo added a wagging tail. Together, they drew a goofy, happy, perfect dog on the page. They named him Inky. And as they drew and talked and laughed, weaving a story about Inky's love for chasing butterflies and digging up tulip bulbs, Leo felt a familiar warmth. It wasn't coming from the feather. It was blooming in his chest. He was writing a story, a real one, with his friend. Chapter 5. A different kind of magic. Leo visited Mrs. Albright every day after that. They would sit and write stories together about the adventures of Inky the dog. They filled a whole notebook. Leo discovered that the words weren't stuck anymore. They flowed easily, inspired by his friend's laughter and his own imagination. One morning, weeks later, Leo was cleaning his room. He went to put the dull, gray feather back in its box. As he picked it up, he noticed something. At the very tip, a single, tiny filament of the feather was glowing with a faint, soft light. The magic hadn't died. It had just changed. It had shown him that the greatest magic wasn't in making stories real, it was in sharing them. The feather's final gift was not a magical dog, but the confidence to find his own voice. That night, Leo didn't write about magical creatures or floating clouds. He took a simple pencil and wrote a story about a boy, an old woman, and a friendship drawn in pencil and ink. And as he wrote the last word, he knew, deep down, that it was the most magical story he would ever tell. The end. Sweet dreams, little storyteller. May your dreams be filled with wonderful tales.